Assalamu alaikum and welcome to this first workshop for community companions. I am your host and project coordinator Zebanisa Rao, and I'm really happy to see you all here today. By now you would be aware of Community Companions, which is a project of Hounslow Muslim Centre designed to support the elderly and vulnerable in our community. So today is the first workshop in a series to help engage and empower our important elders in our community in matters related to medicine, mental health, hobbies, and social activities. If you have any questions or ideas for future workshops, these can be submitted via the links that we will let you know about later on. Our guest today is Dr. Naveed Sayed. Assalamu alaikum, Doctor. Many would have heard his recent very popular and informative webinar on depression and anxiety and Islam. Dr. Naveed is consultant to Public Health England in communicable diseases. He studied medicine at Manchester University, has a postgraduate diploma in medical education and masters in public health. He was advisor for 2 years to the British High Commission in Pakistan. Dr. Naveed will talk about the topic of interest today, and then we will later open for questions and answers. So our topic is fasting safely in Ramadan. How can we maximize our ibadah and fast safely with health issues such as diabetes and high blood pressure, etc.? Over to you, Dr. Naveed.
Thank you for that. Thank you for the invitation, and thank you for the introduction. And so, I mean, I'll try and keep it brief. So I'll just give a sort of a brief overview, inshallah, to allow more time for questions and answers. But as you say, I mean, I suppose the important things are that we need to look after our body. So the more we look after our body, the healthier we are, the better we can do ibadah, which is the purpose of our creation, is to worship Allah. So by looking after our body, we are putting ourselves in a state where we can maximize our worship to Allah. So I think that's the baseline, and that's where we should start from, is, you know, by looking after ourselves and our health, physical, mental, and spiritual health, that will allow us to connect better with Allah. And at no time more so than now during the month of Ramadan, when the blessings are so numerous. So it's really important that we look after our health during this month, because if we're tired, if we're not feeling well, or if you've got illnesses, that detracts from our ability to enjoy Ramadan, that detracts from our ability to worship Allah, and it's a distraction. So it's really important that, you know, we look after our body, and that's, as I say, that's the starting point. But just on that point, it is that, you know, we all know, all the audience know, that fasting is really important. It's one of the 5 pillars of Islam. The word Sawm comes from the Arabic, which means silence and suspension, where we're sort of abstaining from, being suspended from. And the Prophet described it as a shield, and we'll talk about that more, inshallah, in greater detail. But it's really important aspect of our worship. And if, as I said, if we're healthy, we can do ibadah better in terms of quantity of ibadah and quality of ibadah. So our worship, we can do more worship, and we can do more focused worship if we look after our health. So that's why it's really important, this topic, and it should be close to all of our hearts, especially now at the beginning of Ramadan, in the first few days. And again, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala describes for us not only the purpose of our existence, which is to worship Allah, but the purpose of fasting is the same as the generations before us, and that is to attain God consciousness, or taqwa. Or, I mean, the modern term is mindfulness, where we're more mindful of Allah. You know, so by fasting, we can increase our piety, our righteousness, our closeness to Allah. And that's why it's really important that we look after ourselves throughout this whole month. And like with any major thing that we embark upon, whether it's going on a long holiday or going to work or Ramadan, we should prepare well and prepare adequately. And so for Ramadan, ideally we should have been starting our preparation a few weeks ago, if not even now in the first few days of Ramadan, we can still sort of, try to get the preparation right. And then we think of it pre-Ramadan, during Ramadan, and then hopefully taking through the benefits of Ramadan after Ramadan and implementing that in our life and trying to change the way we do things sort of more fundamentally. But just in terms of fasting, we can go into the rules of fasting, who's supposed to fast, what are the do's and don'ts around fasting. And then we can also discuss some of the exemptions that Allah puts for us, because He is the most gracious, the most bountiful. He knows that He doesn't burden us more than which we can carry, and that's on some of the topics that we discussed last time. So He has given certain exemptions for certain types of people, recognizing that sometimes people will be ill, and then there are exemptions for certain illnesses. There are exemptions for people who are traveling. There are exemptions for people who are breastfeeding or who are pregnant or have chronic or acute illnesses. So again, we can talk around those things and how we can work around those exemptions that there are. And also, it's just really important to look after our general health. So it's not just people with diabetes or people with asthma or blood pressure or other chronic conditions. It's the advice is more generic around having a much healthier lifestyle, and that way, as I say, we can maximize our sort of benefit from Ramadan. So try to use this as an opportunity. And again, lots of people talk about things like detoxing, but just to recalibrate how we approach our day-to-day activity. And Allah allows us with this because, as I say, we have this month that comes every year, and this opportunity to recharge, reconnect comes every year, and we need to use that opportunity. Now, the tension sometimes comes in from all of us within our community and ourselves, as we recognize that fasting is a major pillar of Islam, and the rewards for fasting are great. The rewards are immense. And the Prophet talked about how your normal deeds could be increased by 10-fold up to 700-fold, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that fasting, purely for Him, He will give it almost unlimited amount. And not fasting or missing a fast is a major sin. So there's that tension when we feel ill or that we want to fast, but then by fasting it may affect our body. And again, we all go through that. But again, just in terms of the benefits of the month, just as a reminder, because we're right at the start of the month, is obviously it's the month of the Quran, it's the month of charity, and these are things that we should focus on. In addition to that, any action that we do during this month, which is just a normal recommended action, carries the reward of a fard action. Within this month, we have a night which is equivalent to 1,000 months. There's a special gate in Jannah which is for people who fast, and if you fast purposefully for the sake of Allah, you will with sabr, you are guaranteed Jannah, and all your sins will be forgiven if you do it for the sake of Allah. So all of these things show the importance of fasting, and it's not just the abstinence from food and water. It's not doing the other bad things that sometimes we do. We fall into maybe lying or stealing or backbiting or swearing or other bad habits. It's a time to check those things as well. So, as I say, it's a great opportunity that Allah gives us every year to reset and recalibrate, to recharge, and to reflect on our journey so far, and to try and reconnect with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, with the Quran, with some of our other obligations, and to do things better. So that was, as I say, just a very brief introduction, but again, we can talk about some of the other issues as we sort of go through.
Thank you very much for that very educational background on the topic. We can now open for questions if anyone has any. If you could open your video as well as mic, introduce yourself so that we can get to know each other, and then go ahead with your questions. If there aren't any yet, then I have a few.
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam.
It's always great to hear Dr. Naveed Said speak. I haven't got any questions. I just wanted to kind of come on board and show my support towards this good cause.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. And it's good to hear from you as well. And so, yeah, carry on, Zebnisa.
Yeah, so the first question could be that in terms of medication, what is the best way to spread it out while fasting? I suppose it depends on different kind of conditions that if you're diabetic or with high blood pressure, but a general idea of how to space them out.
Yeah, so I mean, I suppose this comes into sort of the routine. And again, if we're doing it justice, because this is such an important month, we shouldn't stumble into Ramadan. We should prepare. And certainly if we've got illnesses, then we should have had this conversation with our GP or our practice nurse. If we're on regular medication and under the care of our family doctor or a specialist, then the time is really in the few weeks leading up to Ramadan to have that conversation about how to adjust the medication and whether or not it is permissible or recommended, rather, from a medical point of view, to fast or not. And certainly, that conversation needs to happen with people who know the individual, who know their history and their health problems and the medication. So I can talk about as a general principle how people can go about that, but certainly just as for specific individuals, they need to have that conversation with their practice nurse, with a specialist, or with their family doctor. Or if you have diabetes, with your diabetic specialist nurse, or your COPD specialist nurse, or whoever you normally link with. And if you're in a Muslim majority area, then it's easier to link up with people who understand fasting, because not all health professionals understand fasting. So you can ask for somebody who appreciates fasting, where you don't need to explain what fasting is about, and then they can tailor the advice more specifically around that. And there's obviously lots of people within the community who are able to facilitate that. But as a general principle, I mean, at the moment, we're not allowed to eat during the daytime hours. So from, I think for us here, it's about 4:30 in the morning till about 8 o'clock at night. And so if you're not allowed to take your medication during those hours, or your oral medication, then you need to see whether you can do it shortly after you open your fast or at suhoor time, and or whether you can have slightly different medication, again through your own family doctors, which can last in a slightly different way. So so generally for oral medication, that's how it should be. We would have that conversation. We shouldn't be tempted, if we're on under specialist care, to change our medications by ourselves. We should have that conversation with our family doctor or the specialist nurses. And again, we can go into sort of more detail about specific things around people with diabetes or with asthma or blood pressure. But by and large, if we feel that our illness is causing us harm, and fasting will aggravate our recovery or aggravate our illness, then the general recommendation is that we are exempt from fasting. This is one of the exemptions, the blessings that Allah gives us. So for everyone else, the rules that we all know are from dawn till sunset. There's no food or water, and we make the niyyah for the fast every day. And the definition of eating and drinking, and it's difficult sometimes it's difficult to actually say that, but we need to be clear what we mean by eating and drinking. It's things that we take in our mouth, that go into our throat, and that we swallow, that then go down our gullet or esophagus, as it were, towards the stomach. Whether or not that has nutritional value, that's not the issue. The issue is swallowing something down.
So an asthma inhaler would break the fast if you had to.
So the majority of scholars would say that the asthma inhaler would break the fast for that reason, and that is the strongest opinion. I mean, I mean, the things that break the fast are smoking. So if you look at the mechanics of smoking and taking an inhaler, it's exactly the same. So if on the one hand, I mean, I've seen scholarly opinions that say smoking is not allowed, but inhalers are allowed, but the actual mechanism of taking it in is the same. So inhaling substances is purposefully would break the fast. Smoking breaks the fast. If we purposefully hang around an area where there's high humidity, you just come out of the shower and it's a bit humid, and you're purposely there just to sort of inhale some of the humidity, you know, or you're in an area where they're sort of burning a lot of incense, and you're purposefully staying there to take that in, inhale that in, then again, those things, if you're doing them on purpose, would break the fast. If they're incidental or accidental, so, you know, if, you know, you're in an area and there's high humidity, you can't get around that, or you're sitting next to somebody who is, you know, who is smoking, and you know, inhale some of that, that doesn't break the fast because it's not purposeful. But then if you just linger there for the reason of doing it, then again, that breaks the fast. And you know, back in, you know, in the olden days, you know, they would talk about how if you're in a sandstorm and then you swallow things because of that, you can't get around that. That doesn't break your fast. You know, so you know, so that, you know, so the issue around inhalers, as I say, for some it's controversial, but for many it's actually, if your asthma is well controlled, that you are able to take your preventative inhalers morning and evening whilst you're in the nighttime hours when it's permitted, and for the rest of the time your asthma is generally well controlled, then it's fine to fast. And obviously, as I'd always say, always, if you are asthmatic, always carry your inhaler. If you're getting to, if your asthma has been provoked by something, which can easily happen, then by all means you are obligated to take your relieving inhaler. That, although that breaks your fast, you're actually, you know, looking after your health, which is more important. So that takes precedence. And the breaking of the fast, you can then make it up later on, make it up in the winter, you know, or if you are unable to make it up, then, you know, you give the fidya. But again, you know, the exemptions and the rukhsa is there for us, that, you know, these things, if Allah provides the illness and he also provides the cure, and he knows us in that situation. So if we, you know, if we started the day with the intention of fasting and we've taken all reasonable precautions, but our asthma, say for example, we're talking about, has become triggered, then taking the inhaler, that is the recommended thing to do. And then we just make a note of that and make that day up later on. So, you know, those, you know, those things are important. And again, the reason why there's the hesitancy from the Ummah and from ourselves is that if we deliberately, purposefully break the fast, that's a major sin. And the way we get around that, the kafara that's related to a deliberate breaking of the fast without good reason, and we've talked about the exemptions that the rukhsah that Allah allows us, but without a good reason, then you have to either free a slave, which doesn't really happen nowadays. You need to fast for 60 days, 60 consecutive days. So if you're fasting for 50, and that's, you know, a daily fast, not, you know, complete abstinence, it's a daily fast for 60 consecutive days. If you somehow miss out on day 57, you need to start the 60 days again. So or you need to feed 60 poor people food for a day. So that's why there's a hesitancy from people around these things. But again, if we change our mindset around recognizing that actually Allah has obligated to do this, but if we are ill for some reason, then He has allowed us, recognizing that, you know, we need to look after our body, our health primarily, and, you know, make it up later on. So if we're in that situation where delaying treatment would worsen our recovery, then, you know, and it's not just, as I say, with asthma, it's with all chronic illnesses. And you know, there are unfortunately a lot of chronic illnesses in the ummah. So, you know, we need to get that message out that whilst it is strong, whilst we have to fast, for those who are very ill, those who are chronically ill or incurably sick, or the frail and elderly, it is better if they don't fast, and there should not be a stigma attached to that. And as an ummah, we should support the people in that. And much like we talked in the last webinar about people with mental health and anxiety problems, if we normalize that discussion, if we normalize this discussion around people being having these illnesses and it's okay not to fast, then they would be less inclined to put their own health at risk. So, you know, that's what I would say around that.
So that kind of covers the exemptions. That I guess, is it that a person should talk to the doctor to discuss whether it's safe to fast, or I mean, what kind of judgment can be made for?
Well, I mean, everyone knows their own health better than anyone else, and so if you have a known illness that is under treatment and care, and you're stable, then have that conversation with your own family doctor or the specialist nurse, you know, and, you know, get the right advice for yourself. Now, there are lots of now very good resources available on the internet, you know, validated resources that I would point people to. So, for example, and these give general advice. Again, it's not specific advice, it's general advice. So again, if you've got diabetes, I would go to Diabetes UK website, or ask someone in your family to go to that website and see what the general advice is. The same with, you know, people with breathing difficulties or asthma. There's Asthma UK, and so we find that there are a lot of resources, and they do talk about, people with that disease who want to fast, and there is a lot of general advice around that. But specifically for each individual, it comes to sort of preparing before Ramadan. So if we were going to go on a marathon, if we're going to go on, as I say, a long holiday, or if you're going to go for Hajj, you wouldn't just turn up and just go and do that. You would prepare for that in some way. And we know Ramadan is coming, and part of the preparation for all of us is, well, what do I need to do, and how do I need to modify my day-to-day routine? And for people who have illnesses, they need to have that conversation with their family, and more specifically with the healthcare professional that's looking after them, where they can then tailor it. And it may for a lot of people just be a tweaking of the times in which the medication is taken. or it may be a slightly different long-acting medication that they would allow. Or the advice would be, given your illness and given how unpredictable it is, or how serious it is, or the potential for it, they may recommend you not to fast. And if that is the expert recommendation, then we have to accept that, and that's outside of our control. And then if the advice is not to fast, then we would then take that as being the thing which gives us the most benefit and the most reward. So if the specialists have said that in their opinion fasting is going to be bad for us, for our health, then that means that that is what Allah wants for us in that situation. Therefore, if we then go against that and try to put our health at risk, we're actually going against what Allah wants us to do. So it's looking at it slightly differently, and I know it's a difficult topic. It's a difficult mindset for people to get around, but it's just basically saying that my illness is outside of my control. This is something that Allah has put upon me. He's not burdening me more than what I can carry. I need to tie my camel as best I can. And this is part of tying the camel. So if the advice from the specialists, and they are the specialists, they know the disease, they know you as a patient, and they will give you what they consider to be the best advice for your health and welfare. And if that advice is best not to fast, then you will get more reward for not fasting than fasting. And then Allah's putting that as a blessing in your path. So, we would be arrogant to take, not to take that rukhsa. So that's how I would see it. But it is a very difficult position for people, because we've grown up knowing how important fasting is and how much reward is associated with fasting, and doing it every year. And then to get to that situation, it is very difficult, and I do accept that.
There's a lot of emotion behind this.
Absolutely, and understandably. And we all want to fast, because we know how much blessings there are in the month. But the blessings aren't just confined to the fasting. The blessings are for all your deeds and actions during the month. So we are encouraged to increase our charity. We are encouraged to increase our reading of the Quran. We are encouraged to do more of our nawafil prayers. We are encouraged to do more dhikr. So, by saying that, by relieving us of the pressures of fasting, we should then be able to, like I said right at the beginning, have a better quantity and quality of experience of the month by focusing those energies on these other things. So it's still benefiting from the vastness of the bounties of Allah during this month, but you're not doing that sort of one aspect. And it's not that you're denying its importance, it's just that you're not in a position to take that forward. So that's what I would say. And again, it is a difficult conversation. But again, if the more we have this conversation, and again, I suspect this forum is part of that, the more we can normalize that behavior and not put undue pressure as a community on our elders or on the people who have illnesses, expecting them to fast when that might be, and sometimes is, injurious to their health.
Absolutely. No, your point is very important, that it isn't just fasting that you have to do to get all the immense reward available. Fasting is just part of it. Everything else is also 70 times reward more than usual. So that's a very, very important point you raised there. Thank you very much. There is a question which has been submitted. I'm not able to go back to sleep after Sehri, as once I'm up, I can't sleep, which means I'm all worked up to get on with the day. This is making me very lethargic and headaches during the day, and not giving my best for extra nafil at night. Any suggestions for this? Thank you for the question.
Yeah, no, that's a really good question, and that affects a lot of people, and so thank you for asking that. And I suppose this goes back to one of the points I mentioned sort of towards the beginning around preparation. So when you know that Ramadan is coming, it's about preparing yourself, and which involves slightly modifying your diet, getting ready for Ramadan. Planning what you're going to do, and having a psychological approach towards what you want to do, and even doing some sort of gentle exercises before Ramadan. But again, now that we're in that place, it's about getting ourselves into a routine, and a sensible routine. And like the questioner said, sleep is really important. I mean, it's critical for us to have a productive Ramadan, a productive fast is good quality sleep. And if we're not getting that good quality sleep, then we need to readjust the other parts of the day. And, you know, like I mentioned sort of in the preamble before everyone joined, is that what I try to do is get a nap during the day. And it's much easier now in lockdown, if you're working from home, to try and find an extra sort of half an hour where you can have a nap. Whether that's lunchtime or after work, but it is important to get that extra sleep, because we're losing out on sleep and it needs to be made up. So, you know, it's really important to plan how we're going to sleep. So if you're finding it difficulty going to sleep after suhoor, then perhaps sleeping during the day, may take some of the pressure off, and then I think when you're going to sleep, not putting yourself under pressure to sleep and falling asleep, works. The other things in terms of, modifying the routine is getting up for suhoor, having something to eat, which is very important, and having something to drink, making sure that we are well hydrated, because that also can give us problems around headaches later on in the day. So making sure that we're well hydrated, we have enough water from iftar time through to sehri time is very important. One of the other general things which it's difficult to do is the rule of thirds that the Prophet ﷺ talked about when we eat. Is a third food, a third water, a third air, and not to overdo things. There is obviously the temptation that we want to reward ourselves, and that we overdo things, and then we overeat, and that in itself can lead to lethargy, and we don't have the ability to focus well. So it's eating proportionately, both at iftar time and at sehri time. And it's what you eat, and we can talk about what you eat as well as being important. Other things that people have said works for them is in going for a little walk, either just before iftar or shortly after iftar. Again, it's fine, and with the weather getting better, that's sort of slightly easier. Again, making sure that we do our tarawih, because that helps us in terms of our digestion and in terms of the worship and sort of compartmentalizing the evening, and doing some sort of regular dhikr in the downtime. So if we sort of try and set ourselves a routine and eat healthily in a balanced way, then I think for most people, the first 2 or 3 days tend to be very tough, where we get the headaches because we haven't worked out how much food and water to have, or where we're still having too much caffeine related drinks during the evening. All of these things can make those things worse, and certainly having tea or coffee in the evening as a reward, for some people that would mean that it's harder for them to go to sleep later on, and that withdrawal from that can, for some people, manifest in a headache during the day. So it's about trying different things to see what works. But I would say is trying to have a particular routine, a sensible routine, and a sensible diet, and prioritizing sleep. And I've made the mistake in the past where I thought I can soldier through, but the lack of sleep catches up on you, and then it can catch up on you quite big, because it can lead to increased sort of stress hormones within yourself, and that can lead you more vulnerable to feeling ill. So sleep is really important, and if we are in that place where we've got headaches or we're not feeling right, then putting your head down and getting either a power nap or a slightly longer proper sleep to catch up is really important.
Thank you. That's a very thorough answer to that question. We have another question. I'll read it out. I'm suffering from chronic pain and back pain. I seek alternative remedies from abroad who always advise to fast without actually seeing what I experienced throughout the whole Ramadan. I don't seek advice from the GP. I'm lacking in level of ibadah, as I'm expected to manage. I'm maintaining exercise on a daily basis. However, my conclusion on the matter is I should not fast and focus more on ibadah. What can you advise, as I don't think there is anything more I can do to self-manage during Ramadan? I avoid tea, coffee, and all fried foods and opt for healthy eating.
Well, thank you for that. And I think, a lot of the modifications that you've mentioned are very sensible. I mean, healthy eating, I mean, who in this day and age would argue against that? We all know what we should be doing. Is whether we do that or not, and we can come on to that. But my advice, I mean, obviously, as an individual, you know your own body and your capacity well enough, and I'm not in a position to comment whether it's allowed for you to fast or not to fast. That's a conversation you need to have with the specialists and or your local imam. But obviously, what you've been through and the place you're at the moment, and you're trying to get the most from your Ramadan, which is perfectly understandable. So in terms of the things that you've mentioned, all of those things are laudable. We as we said, that the purpose of this special blessed month is for us to attain God consciousness, be mindful of Allah in everything that we do, and so that's really that should be sort of the starting point of everything. And for those of us who can fast, that is what we have to do. For those of us who are unable to fast for health reasons or traveling or pregnancy or breastfeeding, etc., then we accept that, and then we try to maximize the rest of the benefits from the
I think someone has put their speaker on by mistake.
It's okay. So I mean, it is important to plan properly.
Can you just have the speaker? Can you see the speaker sign at the corner? There's a speaker sign. Just come. It'll come out of that cross.
Okay, thank you for that. I mean, these things happen to all of us, so don't worry about that. We've all been there. So again, it's recognizing what is the purpose of the month. And the Prophet talked about the balance of the week is Jum'ah, the balance of the year is Ramadan, and the balance of the life is the Hajj. And what we should try to do, certainly with Ramadan, is use it as an opportunity to change our food habits, change our spiritual habits, change our normal daily routine and habits, and think about what can we carry on through beyond Ramadan. And if we think in a scientific perspective, if you think of the month of Ramadan as an intervention in your life, much like we've all experienced a major intervention over this last 12 months, 13 months with COVID. If we are the same, if we are exactly the same in every sense now as we were pre-COVID, that means that COVID is, in essence, hasn't really affected us. We've not learned anything from COVID. And so the intervention of COVID has been, meaningless to us, right? Likewise, if you go on Hajj and you're the exact same person before you went on Hajj to, 2 weeks after you return from Hajj, that means that the Hajj hasn't impacted on you. So then what's the point of it? And the same principle with Ramadan. Allah allows us this blessing every year to recharge and reconnect. If we don't think of any way in which this month can benefit us, even in a small way, then what has been its benefit? And I think that's really important, that even if we just carry on one thing, one small thing, if it's, for different people, it'll be different things, right? For some people, it will be, praying regularly. For some people, it will be praying. For others, it will be doing extra nafil. For others, it will be doing Quran. And if we can carry that on for each of us, because we're all on a different stage in our journey of Islam, then we can look back and say that, we've learned and benefited from Ramadan, and that would then allow us to feel comfortable that Allah has accepted our ibadah, because it's demonstrably changed the way that we live. And that's part of this opportunity. And so all of us are in a different stage in that journey, and we're all struggling with different struggles, be it health struggles, chronic problems, or other things. And Ramadan provides us the opportunity to recalibrate. So for that a particular person, again, it's recognizing where they're at, doing their utmost to manage their situation, their health in the particular situation. And from a personal perspective, I would strongly encourage them. They may not see their GP regularly, but I would encourage them, because that's my background. I'm a doctor by background, and I firmly believe in the benefits that that medical care can bring to people. I would strongly encourage them to go and have that conversation with their family doctor. And if they're not getting the answers, then maybe getting a second opinion, or going to a pain specialist, because there are a lot of people who specialize in these types of problems, and then take it from a specialist level, where you've got the experts advising you, rather than necessarily just hoping that what your own solution is acceptable.
One point in this question is that they seek advice on alternative remedies from abroad without actually the person seeing what they're going through. Is that safe for alternative remedies, or is that advisable at all?
I mean, from my background, it depends what you mean by alternative remedies. That means different things to different people. I mean, some things which were seen as alternative remedies 20 years ago have proven benefits, like acupuncture. So many years ago, the scientific community didn't recognize the full benefits that acupuncture could bring to some people in some situations. Now we recognize that. I myself have, when I was injured, I had a course of acupuncture through my physiotherapist. So it has been mainstreamed. So I'm not going to dismiss all forms of alternative therapies, but I would say that it needs to be of good quality, well researched therapies. And the problem is that there sometimes some alternative therapists have given their own kind a bad reputation because of unscrupulous ways in which they've treated people. So it's just about being careful. And again, if I was in that position, I would try my utmost to go to the most respectable alternative therapists that there are, because it's my health, it's my body, and why would I gamble away my health? So I would strive and exert myself, if I'm in that situation, to find the best and most reliable people in that situation, rather than people with a dubious background.
And it would be advisable to see the patient as well, not just over the phone.
Of course it would, but again, there are alternative ways in which people are doing that now. We're having teleconsultations now a lot more in healthcare, so things can be facilitated in a much easier way. And it is always important, if you're giving bespoke healthcare support to people, to try and have that conversation with them and know them and know their ailments properly. Which is why I'm not going to give definitive medical advice here. I can talk about general issues, and my default will always be see the specialist, see your own family doctor and the people who've been looking after your health.
They mentioned homeopathic remedies, but we're running out of time. Actually, there's another question. By the way, you are welcome to have your videos open and mic open to join the discussion and to make your presence known. But there's a question on, are we allowed to have vaccinations during fasting?
That's a really good question. So in short, yes, but I'll qualify that. So your vaccinations, and we talked before about what would break the fast, and generally what breaks the fast are things that you're eating and swallowing. So those things, so taking tablets or inhalers, that would break your fast. And we talked, and if you're taking an oral vaccine, and there are some oral vaccines, that again would break your fast if it enters into the gastrointestinal system, the stomach and the intestines, and those things break your fast. The things that don't break your fast are vaccinations through the skin, because you're not swallowing it. Other things that don't, other medical interventions that are safe from an Islamic point of view, alongside your vaccinations, whether it's for COVID. And once I've got this opportunity, if you have been called for the COVID vaccine, I would strongly encourage all the listeners to go and take their COVID vaccine. Things like dialysis are permitted, because again, that's an injection. The blood's coming out and it's being filtered and cleaned and put back in. That's perfectly permissible. Where people have your camera into, if it's into a joint, then that's fine. But if you're swallowing the camera, that's not permitted. So things that go into the stomach, that's not allowed. Having a blood test is perfectly permissible. Giving blood in terms of blood donation, it's permissible. I wouldn't advise it, because you may feel more weak because of the fasting. But it is permissible to have that. X-rays, ECGs, these things are perfectly permissible. And another question that I often get asked is, can I brush my teeth with toothpaste? We are permitted to use a miswak. We are permitted to use toothpaste, so long as we don't swallow. And you do your best to keep it in the mouth and spit it out. Much like during wudu, we're allowed to rinse our mouth and spit it out. You know, we're not allowed to swallow. So those things are permitted. They don't break the fast, and certainly a vaccine will not break the fast. And I would encourage people to have the vaccine. I do appreciate some people will be hesitant about that. And if there are clinics that are offering vaccine out of hours, then certainly go for those. But from a Sherry perspective, vaccines are, injectable vaccines are perfectly permitted.
I think with well, how about insulin shots, insulin injections? Are they also permitted?
So in insulin, the issue with people who have diabetes is slightly more complex, not from the injection perspective, but from the general health perspective. And there are a lot of people who have diabetes. If your diabetes, firstly, see your doctor or see a diabetic specialist nurse before Ramadan and do a Ramadan diabetic plan. And that is what we should be encouraging all people with diabetes to do. And they need to manage their diabetes. They need to own their diabetes, and they need to be sort of on top of how to care for themselves. Generally speaking, if the diabetes is well controlled with tablets, then the advice tends to be, if once they've spoken to the GP or the diabetic nurse, is that they are allowed fasting. If they think that they can fast, that they are allowed to fast, and you just take the tablets at when you're permitted to take the tablets. And then also when you're breaking your fast, just be more careful about how you're breaking it. So have small amounts of food, have it more regularly, have lots of fluids, have sugar, stay away from sugared drinks, and it may be that people need to adjust their tablets, but again, that's a discussion they need to have with the diabetic team. It may be that they need to increase their blood monitoring, so to check the blood sugar level more regularly, and that would then allow them to control or monitor their state as well. With regards to again, people who are needing insulin on a regular basis, the general advice from the scholars is that they are exempted from fasting. So they shouldn't be putting themselves at risk through fasting, and they should do the fidya as we've mentioned. So if they're long-term diabetics, some people, what I know, they will try to do their makeup fasts in the winter when the days are so short that they can adjust their diabetic control in a much more controlled way. So some people do that. Other people, as they accept that they can't fast, and they'll just feed the poor people because they don't have the time to make it up again, because they've got this chronic incurable illness, as it were. Other people think that they are able to manage their diabetes even after their advice from the specialist diabetes support team. And again, it's just about making sure you're checking your blood more regularly, you're adjusting the doses, and just making sure you're more sensible about what you're eating. So having your more of your slowly absorbed food at suhoor time, cutting down on your insulin, and knowing that if you do feel as if you're having a hypo or a hypoglycemic attack, which is sort of diabetics will know when their blood sugar plummets quite low, and then they may feel dizzy or sweaty. And so it's recognizing when you're in that state, and then preempting any further complications of that by breaking the fast, having a shot of glucose, and then taking it easy after that, and that's perfectly permissible. But again, people with diabetes need to have that conversation with their diabetic specialist team, who know their diabetes and know how to adjust things for them.
So for type 1 diabetes, where you have the insulin shot, you'd kind of say to kind of avoid fasting. But for type 2, sorry, there's a question that what about diet related, so type 2 diabetes?
So again, if it's diet controlled or just tablet controlled, generally, people can get away with adjusting either the timing of the tablets or the type of tablets, and adjusting how they eat in the evening times. But again, for individual, I mean, again, there's really good resources now, because diabetes is so prevalent in our community. There's really good online resources. So I would direct people to the Diabetes UK website, but more importantly, have the conversation with the diabetic specialist team, who know them, who know their diabetes, who can give them the proper advice. So that's what I would say.
Okay, and I think perhaps the last question we might be able to. What type of food would you recommend for iftar and sahri?
So the Prophet ﷺ said that to break the fast, we should try to break the fast with a wet date, rutub dates. If you can't find a wet date, then a dry date, tamar dates, and then after that, take sips of water. And generally, what I would say is break your fast, with some dates, water, maybe some fruit. Try not to have too much fried food. So just break the fast, go away, pray Maghrib, and then come back and have your meal. Don't reward yourself by overeating. Have complex carbohydrates, which is your barley, wheat, sort of dal, lentils, basmati rice type food. So these complex carbohydrate foods, and/or some of your, certainly in the morning for sehri time, have your slow release fiber foods like your cereals, your grains, your seeds. So that's what I would recommend, having food from all the food groups, having a balanced diet, not overdoing it, having some fruit and veg, having some, as I say, bread, cereals, or potatoes, having a bit of meat or fish, having some milk or dairy products, a bit of fat and sugar stuff, but all in balance. But not to overdo it at iftar time, because then you just lose energy. All the blood goes to your stomach, and you can't really be productive for your tarawih or for your dhikr or reading the Quran, etc. And you may find it difficult to go to sleep. And again, in the morning time, it is important. The Prophet says it is important for us to have suhoor, so to wake up, have something to eat before the morning. So that's what I would encourage. And again, this is, it is really important to have that morning meal. The Prophet encouraged us to have that, and again, I would strongly encourage us to have that again, because the days are quite long here in the UK. So we do need to be quite careful about that, and not just sort of go to sleep. I mean, we're up for Fajr anyway, so why not just adjust the clock a little bit and wake up before Fajr, have something to eat, even if it's a glass of water, keep hydrated, avoid the headaches later on in the day, and then start the fast.
Absolutely. And actually, would this be a good time? I guess it would be, to get an annual health check. So blood tests such as fasting, blood glucose and triglycerides. Ramadan would be an ideal time for this.
Not really, because it's not your normal routine. Okay. So in terms of your normal your MOT, as it were, what we would like to see is how you are normally functioning. So during Ramadan, you're functioning in a slightly different state. You're functioning in a fasting state. So if it is just to get your fasting an estimate of your background for your diabetic control, then possibly you could argue that. But generally speaking, no. We would say, wait till you're in your normal routine, doing your normal activities. That's when we would encourage people to have their checkup.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that. I think actually we've run out of time now. There's a topic that's mentioned, top priority list for ibadah during Ramadan, other than the fard. Before the last 10 days, we'll have a topic on mental health and the last 10 days of Ramadan, so we could possibly cover that in there. Other than that, we hope everyone found the session today very useful. If you would like to offer feedback on this session or suggest any workshops for the future, please get in touch via the links. I've mentioned my email address in the chat for any future communication. And I mean, that was just an amazing account of everything to do with fasting in Ramadan for the elderly. I think you covered everything, Dr. Naveed. So thank you very much for your time and your expertise.
Exactly. Thanks for the opportunity. And again, just to reinforce the fact that fasting is important. We all need to do it, but we all need to get the most out of the month in all the other ways, increasing our ibadah. The healthier we are, the better our quality of ibadah and quantity of ibadah. And the purpose of the month is for us to be mindful of Allah and have that connection with Allah. So it's really important to change how we structure our day, do those things, and then take forward something beyond Ramadan as well.
Inshallah. Next week's topic is on COVID. So, if anyone has any more questions, we can cover them, I guess, in the question and answer section for next week. Someone has asked that info on future workshops. If you email me at my address on here, zebanisa@hamzamuslimcenter.com. Sorry, I've left out the .com there. I can forward you information and add you to the WhatsApp groups, inshallah. Jazakallah khair so much, Dr. Naveed.
Jazakallah. Thank you, everyone, and thank you for your questions.
Thank you.
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam.
Jazakallah. Thank you very much.